Welcome everybody to Spike Down. My name's Keith Fortune. Joining me as always is Roy, and it's episode 4, and we're heading into week 5. Not only is it week 5, there's a couple things that it's attached to that. Final week of play, which means relegation's right around the corner, which also means midseason cup is right there. But before we can get into all that and all that juicy goodness, let's talk about predictions last week, Roy. How'd you do? I think you did all right.
Yeah, listen, I just want to say whoever is messing with the time machine, they need to really stop, because there's no way we're already at week 5. That's just insanity. Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna go into predictions straight away.
Let's do it. Let's see how everyone did.
There was people did. Some things were done.
Yeah.
I think the first match was super tough to predict, to be honest. There was pretty much a split decision, a little bit leaning towards the SAD side, which I think, SAD ended up winning 2-0. So everyone did a pretty good job there. I'd like to give a shout out to my coworker, aka Seaside, as well as Dryad, for being the only ones predicted the Turtle Troop game versus TSM. I have to admit that is an impressive guess, because that was a tough one, to be honest.
Well, I'm happy I'm not alone in my madness for this pick. It's hard to always be right sometimes, once in a while. But humbly accept. Although you were right about the SAD pick, so. And everyone was right about the Moistek Shop 5 pick, the auction, the M80. Those were all very cross the board unanimous. Wyatt going outside the box with a Thinking Men pick. I do respect it.
I actually do respect it.
The rest of the week was kind of, I felt like last week was timid. I think this week is maybe where we get crazy with it. At least me. I'm getting crazy with it. Yeah,
it's like the first 4 weeks were like the story and world building episodes, and now we're in like we're going straight from world building to peak action and like decisions that are about to be happening right here in week 5 of VCLNA. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, decisions are getting made. That is for sure. Everything's coming into place. And let's talk about last week. Predictions aside, let's take a look. We'll go match by match, give a couple minutes to each. And obviously, as we mentioned, starting the week with SAD versus the Glazers. I might get some credit for one of my picks, but I'm not getting credit for the Glazers pick. SAD take the win. It's funny, Roy. We talked about this last week. The Glazers aren't playing bad; they're just not winning. It's a weird thing to say out loud. They're winning rounds, and the games are close, and they're playing okay, but they're not winning those match-defining rounds. I guess is a fair way to put it.
Yeah, no. The way I think a good analogy in my mind is like they have cooked a very nice dish, but they kind of forgot to put the seasoning in. You know what I'm saying? Like they have the ingredients, they're just missing a little bit of that flair that makes them sort of unique, right? Like when I'm watching them, it just seems like I don't want to say they're playing generic Valorant. That seems kind of bad, but they're not playing like super exciting Valorant. Like they're playing very fundamental, very structured Valorant. There's no like X factor, it feels like. And I think they could benefit a lot from having just like some kind of boom for some kind of like flair that really like identifies them as a team.
And I think a fair comparison, maybe, you can tell me if this is a fair comparison, would be a team like TSM, maybe a team like YFP, where we get firepower, which I would say on par with the Glazers, but team comp and uniqueness maybe is what separates them right now. And not necessarily going meta or not going meta. They're just finding interesting balance where their utility can bail them out of situations where they might be outgunned. I don't know if that's fair to say, Roy. It feels fair, but I might be out of touch with that.
Yeah, it's honestly really tough to say, because their match against SAD was actually super, super close. Like it really just came down to like a few key rounds going in either direction, to be honest, and SAD ended up winning them. But in terms of like compositions themselves, it's totally mundane. Like there's nothing really insane going on for either teams in the 2 maps that were played. Like Split, they're pretty meta comps. Sunset was a pretty like kind of meta comp. It wasn't really anything too wild, but I have to say that Bob really came through for her team this week.
Yeah,
she had an insane performance, and on top of that as well, you can already tell that there are some things that are kind of clicking for SAD, where like we're starting to see them play more of their game, and they're not really too worried about like matching their opponents or kind of doing anything. Like they're sort of resorting back to that really slow, controlled default, relying on the fact that they have like super vocal players in every role, right? Like that is their strengths, and they're starting to kind of play into it. And you can just tell, like, I think outgun is sort of fair to say, to kind of like roll it back a little bit, because look at the first kills and first stats, right? Like you just look at those stats and you can kind of tell, like, man, like TG, if they were just winning just a little bit more first kills, these matches would be like completely different, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. Shout out to Bob. As you said, she played really unreal. And I would say that's a nice turnaround from SAD, a team that I think have these great ideas and ideas of comps. Like Ascent is one we kind of like to what they saw, but the performance and result weren't exactly aligned. But a team that I think if they could find consistency and get Skarn online, Darkus seems to be Mr. Consistent. And if Bob can settle in like she is, mid-season contender cup, maybe they're contenders. We could see. Who knows? The second game of that day was Turtle Troop versus TSM. As we know, got the pred right, but it was a risk that I think not many people are willing to take in their Preds, and rightfully so. Turtle Troop looking a little shaky in week 3, week 4. It's kind of like, okay, they're going against TSM. As you mentioned, they're kind of on their progression curve, getting better and better. But Turtle Troop pull it out. Good signs from them. What do you think? Was it more good play from Turtle Troop, TSM faltering, or was it just a good match across the board?
I think there must have been some sort of like internal conversation that was happening at Turtle Troops that has like created like radical changes, because they pulled out a completely new comp on Sunset. So that was like, they probably had like some kind of surprise factor where like TSM was prepping for a specific thing, and then boom, day of the match comes in. They've reverted to a completely different composition, right? They went back to an Omen, Cypher, KO, Gecko, Raze. That's sort of like pseudo Sentinel, if not the Sentinel composition on that map. So I think they must have had some kind of conversations, and they kind of like toned down the deadlock a little bit. And they're leaning back into a more meta. And immediately the results have shown that like, okay, maybe a simple game plan with simple compositions might work better for us than trying to like reinvent the wheel and play like a completely different version of Valorant. Because I mean, they had a pretty solid performance against TSM.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that stands out for me is it doesn't look like Corey is trying to do too much, if that makes sense. Like the first couple matches, I think with new comps and trying new ideas, I think there's two things that get affected. One, your duelists and how they take fights and their pathing, and then two, how does your Sentinel play into the whole system? And I think now that Turtle Troop have gone back to, it seems like comforts. You know, I haven't watching them this week. I never felt like, okay, B-Dog shouldn't be on Gecko here, or ooh, his breach doesn't look great. It felt comfortable. And I think Corey thrives in that comfortability. I mean, clearly Weeda does as well. Just
I was gonna say.
Omen. So, really cool stuff from them.
I feel like it's been a minute since Weeda has shown that he has the potential to like really take over games, right? Like he's sort of taken on this sort of like supportive back roll seat in this team, considering like the talent that he has, right? Like you got Corey, B-Dog, and Adder. Like how much work do you really have to do when you have these players on your team? But I mean, he came through 26-9. On a 21 round game. That's insanity. Plus 17, 10 assists. Like just great. They did a really good job setting up Corey as well. So they're kind of going back into the sort of like setup system, set up your duelist, and then go from there, which I think worked out really, really well for them. And it sort of caught TSM off guard. Yeah,
TSM not in any danger of relegation. In fact, none of these teams are. So kind of just really early feelers heading into the midseason cup. Excited to see how that progresses. Story of 2-0s continues. Heading into day 2, TWT, Moist X Shopify. Honestly, my summary of this, Roy, MXS just looked way more coordinated. They felt way more on the same page, and they kind of dominated. Maybe fair to say.
Come on, just lead into it. They dominated. It is what it is. Like it honestly was a bit of a team diff. And really, for me, like, okay, TWT did not play up to the level that MXS, like they needed to defeat MXS. Sure, okay, all things considered. TWT has shown serious improvement, though. Like, despite the results, like all things considered, TWT is playing pretty well. And on the other side of this book is like MXS. I'm not sure what is going on, but they have lost 9 out of the last 10 pistols. 9 out of 10 pistols. For if you ask any pro, they will tell you pistols are like 50. Probably the most 50-50 rounds in the game. You were either super unlucky to lose 9 coin flips in a row, or you're like, there's something that needs to be like revamped with the way they're approaching pistols, or like maybe the way that the things that they're buying on these kind of rounds, or like, I don't know, but losing 9 out of 10 is not a great look. And I feel like you kind of need every edge that you could get when you're starting to play like against, Oxygen, against, obviously they beat Oxygen last time, but you need like every edge you can get to like challenge them consistently, right? Like you cannot be losing every pistol and then playing M80. Like that's just tough. That's super. You're just playing uphill the entire time. It is super tough.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is promising for Moisex Shopify. Kind of, if you look back on like Flya, Brock, for example, last season, they didn't come online until the later half, or really stage 2 essentially of last year. It's good to see them coming together now, especially with what people would consider a drastic change and taking your coach and throwing him in a player spot. All that together looking really solid. No one, you could say Mata stands out, but as a team as a whole, I would say they're up there with Auction as the tightest team play. Honestly, M80, it's so tough to call, but
it's really tough to call.
Very, very consistent looking, and I think consistency throughout the season is better than a few pop-off games here and there. And I'd rather them pop off as a team, and they're starting to do that. Hopefully,
I'd like to see them consistently win some pistols. Is what I would like to see.
Well, that would probably make these games would be. I mean, we would say
it'd be easier.
Yes, we could say dominating a lot more confidently if they have those pistols.
Oh, 100%. Dude, like you look at the scores, like you see 9-13, you see like 7-13. Like, okay, 7-13 is a little bit more of a sweep. 9-13 is like, okay, wow, that was kind of close. But then you look like, okay, they lost a pistol, and that's another thing. They're losing so many bonuses. Like, you cannot be losing pistols and the bonuses. That's just hard mode. And somehow they're winning the majority of the gun rounds, though. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. They are consistent in the gun rounds, but something is going on with their pistols and their anti-bonuses, and they really need to iron that out ASAP. But one final thing as well is like, dude, Mata's first kill, first death ratio is like shaping up to be one of the best right now in the league. And I mean, the kid kind of does it all. Like he's insane fragger, really good at opening up rounds, super communicative. He's the vibe merchant of the team. Like, what more can the guy fill to like solidify himself as one of the best players in this league? You know what I mean?
Gonna have to win it, isn't he? It's really what it comes down to. He's just gonna have to win it. Is the unfortunate chip on his shoulder. Speaking of chips on shoulders, YFP, they definitely had one from last week. And unfortunately for them, it was Auction that they picked this week. Oxygen taking them down in 2-0 fashion. What a bounce back week for Dapper. And honestly, Vernos is kind of still that guy, isn't he? He is delivering in pretty much every aspect Auction need. And that's not even talking about the 3 other star players you can mention behind him. Scary stuff. Auction continue to look great.
Yeah, no, the one thing I really appreciate about Oxygen is like, you could have an off day if you're on the Oxygen roster, because there are 4 other people that will easily pick up your slack. You know what I mean? Like, they have so much to fall back on. I think that's what makes them kind of dangerous. But before we completely glaze the Oxygen, I do want to point out how close of a series that was between these two teams. Because the first map on Split was double OT. Like 15-13, barely winning the match. Barely winning it in double OT. And like, dude, Thief played like decently well. Like, everyone's kind of playing decently well. But what really throws me off is like, okay, you look at the stats for that first map, and like, if you were to hide the scoreboard, I wouldn't be able to tell who won. Like,
yes.
Like, I mean, sorry, I would be like Oxygen clearly have won this. Like, it was like 13-5 or something. But then you look at like Thief, 110 ADR, Jonah, 109 ADR, Penny, 140 ADR. All of them are negative on first kills, first deaths. Like, literally every single player was negative on Split, and it was still double OT.
Still close.
They must have been having like impeccable post plans or something, or like something was definitely clicking for them. The only thing that sucks for YFP is like, okay, like, yeah, things are starting to click for you. You're starting to play a little bit better, but now you're kind of in a hole that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, sometime real soon.
Yeah, it's getting scary. But kudos to Oxygen. YFP, very close. Interesting comps, by the way. Definitely leaning in more of the, we're going to take the fights. We think, it's what we need to do at this point type of feel, especially the Rain-On Split. And then you see the Neon. Jeez, I was like, what agent is that? I haven't seen it in a minute. The Neon on Sunset. That's pretty kind of like old Sunset meta. I don't even know if it really came in a full meta, but definitely something that was run early on in Sunset. Cool.
What is sort of interesting on Sunset is this sort of like evolution of the meta where people are leaning off info initiators and leaning more into the KO. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Would you consider Gecko as an info initiator? Like, for me, he's not like Sky or Sova or Fade, right? Like, yeah, you can get info with him, but I would just consider him like an initiator. I wouldn't really classify him as like an info initiator, right?
I mean, like, if we're making subcategories, to me, he's like a map control brawl initiator. Like he is hard setting up with clear util and flash util plus plant the spike.
Like in the same realm as Breach.
Yeah, I would say him and Breach are similar, but Gecko's more in your gunfights. I'd throw him in there. I hope we see more Gecko. We didn't see it this series. But
the KO solo initiator, we've been seeing a lot more often. KO Breach is starting to kind of pop up as well. Like that is such an interesting part of the meta because are people just starting to realize like, okay, we kind of have a good grasp on the game, so we don't need to crutch info initiators anymore, and we can lean more into the more useful utility. They're like, okay, we give up a little bit of info util, but we have much better utility to like brawl, re-clear space, like you know what I mean? Like take sites, post plans. Like they have so much to work with in post plans. Like it's insanity. These comps are tough to deal with.
KO flashes are probably still the best flashes in the game? Question mark?
Yeah,
I would say so.
The good ones,
it feels that way. Yeah. So we'll see if the KO starts to get more Lotus playtime. Maybe we'll have some stats to show Gecko versus KO. That could be fun. Maybe next week. We'll see what happens. And we're on to the last day. It's M80 versus Winthrop University. And M80 doing what they do. It felt like they were just on a heater this week. And unfortunately for Winthrop University, they were on the receiving end of what M80 have kind of just been doing this whole season. You know what I mean? Just winning, really.
Yeah, no, shout out to Jerk, though. He really, Jerk and Infiltrator actually tried their damn best to get them past the finish line on the second map because it did go all 24 rounds. Okay, first map, 13-1. Clean for M80. Lotus, 13-11. That could have been a third map series somehow, and we would be having a completely different conversation about M80's dominance in the league, but they still managed to defeat it. And afterwards, after the game, I saw a bunch of players posting tweets of like, oh, we got too careless, we're trying to end the game too fast. Like, I let this be a lesson. Nothing is free in Challengers. Literally nothing is free. Stay on your toes. Don't slack. Stay locked in because anyone can take a map from you. And man, Jerk and Infiltrator, they tried their damn best. And not even just them, actually. Like, look at all their first kills on that map. Like 3-0.
I was about to say,
3-0 for Jerk, 6-3 for Infiltrator, 4-0 for Aguchi, 5-0 for Nasi. Moobs went 0-3. Okay, that's fine. But like everyone else is like extremely positive. Like, okay, yeah, you can say you are not locked in if you're M80. But I mean, come on, you got to give some credit to the Winthrop University players because, I mean, you're beating some of the best players in the region. Like,
true.
You know what I mean?
And I think if a couple of those rounds, I'm assuming they had a lot of 5v4s, they converted one more of those, right? Who knows what happens to this map overall. Cool little matching comps kind of brawl. See who's got the best. And I would consider this, honestly, maybe hot take. This, to me, is kind of meta on Lotus right now. The Omen, you know, the Fade, the KJ, the Viper, the Raze. I think it has everything you need, and teams that go out of that don't like that combination on this map. I think it's like the only two categories for me is like you either play this comp because it covers every checkbox, or you uncheck a couple boxes and check a couple ones outside, you know what I mean, and get a Breach.
Oh yeah.
Or get a Gecko. And it's really cool to see these teams go head to head in the comp battle. I think, as you said, Infiltrator was just, it felt like all over the place, getting timings, taking every fight he wanted. Really, really cool stuff from them and promising. But unfortunately for Winthrop University, we're going to get to it in a little bit, in the hot seat coming into this week. And obviously to round out last week, we had Core versus Thinking Men, a 2-0 from Core. Zeldris, now 2 weeks in a row, is starting to show up. He continues to destroy. But more importantly, if you go back and look at if you've been following the scene as long as Roy and I have, you go back and watch old Zeldris footage, he'd own people, but he'd always felt distracted, or there was always like something stopping him from progressing mid-rounds into something more for him. And I think the last 2 weeks, something has clicked, whether he's getting clear direction or he's just locked in. He's in the flow state or something, Roy, for those last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But he doesn't look distracted. He seems very clear-minded. You can tell if he gets a first pick, there's an instant reaction from him and his team. If he doesn't, he has to keep going. There's always next steps. And I think either the team has rallied around him to make it easy for him, or he's really stepped it up.
I also think, I mean, there's probably an element of the fact that he's probably just maturing as a person and as a player. Like, dude, the kid was playing since he was like 16, 17 years old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously his kind of play style and like his decision making and his maturity, like about overheating, how to play out rounds once you've secured advantages for your team, like that stuff is going to continue, you know, like it's going to continue developing. You have players like T-Dog and Ocean who are pretty like structured and like pretty discipline oriented, so I'm sure he's kind of starting to fit into that system. But man, we absolutely need to mention, I know this is a hot take, but this was, in my opinion, the best match of the week.
Oh yeah, no, that had
everything that we needed in a match. Like, it had good strategy, it had good ideas. There's a lot of pop-off players, a lot of pop-off rounds. 13-11 on both maps. Like, really the only negative takeaway, and this is a crazy negative takeaway, but the only negative takeaway for me in this match is the fact that neither of these teams looked like they knew what they were doing on attack side descent. Like,
weird how that worked out though, right? It was interesting. Yeah. And it still ended 13-11.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just like like Thinking Men are playing the Viper comp, and you don't get that much reps against that comp, right? So it's like there's like an element of like, oh, let's throw off everyone. Everyone's kind of thrown off a little bit. But I mean, I say they didn't know what they were doing on attack. They just didn't get a lot of rounds. But they obviously had game plans. They had good ideas, but it just seemed like they were missing that little bit extra in terms of like how to close out the rounds to really like get themselves into a good scenario. But their defense was like unreal on that map. Deep breath. Okay, Zeldris. This is my final point before I'm gonna nerd out one more time. Zeldris brought out the op so early on his defense side on Ascent. They actually did not know how to deal with it. And not only did he pull out the operator, Keith, he was playing the most awkward angles to like predict that he's gonna be there, and he kept getting the opening kills. Every time he's in one of those awkward angles, like he would either be in an angle and peek it at an awkward timing, or it would be like, you think he's on this angle, but he's like a few pixels to the side, and he's just like, oh, Zeldris is here again, opping. Like, dude, he was doing an insane job just working the map with the operator. It was beautiful to watch, to be honest. Yeah,
great week. And if you know, we normally do this where we say, hey, go back and watch this match. Normally it's of the top 3 big dogs, but I would say out of last week's matches, if you miss this one, it's worth a watch. You're going to come to appreciate paint, and you're also going to come to be like, oh, how do you shut down a Zeldris op on Ascent? I'm sure some teams are going to be watching that heading into the midseason cup, because that map's probably going to come up. And if he keeps playing like he is, his core team elevates to another level out of nowhere. So we know there's 3 teams who are in contention for relegation. There's only 2 relegation spots. That's Thinking Men, the Glazers, and Winthrop University. Roy, break down for me, how does this happen? What has to happen for who to get relegated?
All right, everyone. It is a kind of convoluted. I'll do my best, okay? So there's only one condition for Thinking Men to not be relegated, okay? Thinking Men will have to defeat TWT in a clean fashion. It needs to be a 2-0, and it needs to have like nice, clean, healthy lead. On the other side, the Glazers would need to beat Winthrop University, but it cannot be a sweep of a win. It has to be a little bit messy, and they need to lose a little bit of the round differentials. That is the only way. And then in that case, it goes to round differential. Thinking goes through, and then Winthrop and the Glazers from Group B end up getting relegated. Now, if Winthrop wins the match, the Glazers and Thinking Men are both immediately relegated. And then in any other context, so like if the Glazers win and it's very clean, then it is most likely Thinking Men and Winthrop who end up getting relegated.
Well, there we go. So let's just say the importance of the Glazers versus Winthrop, the final match of the day of the entire week 5 is
is that the last match?
Cinema. They're the last match.
Oh,
so it's must watch cinema. If Thinking Men, I mean, even if they win or lose, it's still super important. So make sure you tune in. It's gonna be a bit of a wild ride. Because even if Thinking Men lose, it's still between Winthrop and the Glazers, and the match still is important. So no matter what, watch that last one of this week. It's going to be really important. Can't wait for it. And let's just do a minute. Let's project ourselves into the future. Mid-season cup. You know what? Just for fun, Roy, let's do it right now. Just for fun. Give me your top 3 mid-season cup teams.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think that one's kind of...
All right, let's do top 4. That way we can.
I was going to say top 3.
Yeah.
The big 3 are the top 3. Like Oxygen,
agreed.
Moist, M80, uncontended top teams in BCL NA right now. For that 4th slot,
ooh,
It's tough. That is tough. I genuinely don't know. At first, I kind of doubted the Turtle Troop. Like, I didn't doubt it. I don't want to say doubt. We both discussed that Turtle Troop does have the recipe to be the top 4 team. Yep. They just didn't have the precedence or the tenure that they have any kind of like consistent results. But as of right now, they're sitting nice and clean at 3-1. If they close out their close out their last match of the week versus M80, then that's it. That proves that they're the top 4. I mean, even if they lose against M80, I would still think that as of right now, they're looking like a top 4 team. It is, it's just, it is what it is. They're just looking like the cleanest team right now. Obviously, things could change when the midseason cup happens. There are several weeks from the ending of this season when the relegations happen, May 6th to 7th, and then the midseason cup is happening around May 15th to 18th or 19th. So like that's a lot of weeks of practice going on in between all of that. Agreed. So these things could change, but I think as of right now, projecting where we are into the future, it's Moist, Oxygen, M80, not in any particular order, and then in 4th place it is Turtle Troop.
Okay, I agree with the top 3. I would be crazy to try to talk my way out of not justifying one of those being top 3. But I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to say week 5, we have SAD versus TSM. Match that doesn't really make a difference in relegation, makes a difference in the points you're going to get. And I think whoever comes out on top of that match is going to play 4th in the midseason cup. Yep.
Oh,
that's how I'm feeling. Because it's evenly matched teams. You know, they've had just an absolute run of a season. And I think them playing each other last is perfect to gauge where they're at, who's 3rd place in Group B. And I think just based on how Turtle Troop have looked, as great, as much as I want to see them thrive, going against M80, the last match, then you have to sit with that and stew with that for a couple weeks for the midseason cup. I think SAD or TSM, whoever wins their last match of the season, is going to get 4th.
Wow. Okay. I like that. I know. That is a great feeling, dude. I can support that. I can get behind that. I like
Perfect. Well, it's about that time of the show where we invite everyone in chat to join us in making our predictions for this week. Obviously, you're watching on Wednesday, and we'll just start right there. TSM, SAD, as I mentioned, whoever wins that, my opinion's taking 4th, which means I have to make a decision who's going to take 4th in both aspects. So I have to make that decision. Didn't click in my brain till now. And then Oxygen versus Core. So you know what? I will bear this burden then. TSM versus SAD. I am going SAD, which means SAD is getting 4th in the midseason cup. It's crazy I just made both predictions right there. But there you have it. And then I'll even alleviate the burden for Core Oxygen. Auction. And you know what? As much as I want to pick SAD, you know what? Even for the drama, I'm picking TSM this week.
You're picking TSM?
Just for the drama? What? Just for the drama, I'm picking TSM this week. I think that match is crazy to start off this week, by the way. You guys are in for a treat. I think this match might be the best of the week. Hot take. Barring Glazers Winthrop, depending on the context.
Yes, that is...
So yeah, TSM Auction. There we go. Throwing that out there.
TSM Oxygen. Wow. Okay. I think I'm going to oppose respectfully.
Understood.
TSM is a great team, but I got to support the underdog. SAD is on a nice little, kind of clean streak. They're kind of, they're finding their footing. They're starting to sort of like the power up a little bit. Their power maybe over 9,000. We're not sure, but I'm feeling SAD. I think they can make a run for it. I think they can prove everyone wrong. The little Zoomers could pop off. I'm going to go with SAD versus TSM. And then obviously Oxygen versus Core. I do think Core has a chance. There definitely is a chance. I'm not sure what that chance is. I don't think it's as low as we think, though. I think there is like a genuine world where like Core matches up nicely against Oxygen. Yeah. But it would have to be like Core's kind of playing super, super high on their spectrum, and then Oxygen's kind of playing on the kind of like the bottom of their gameplay, and they're getting really sloppy. Somewhere in that, if that formula makes sense. Sure. But I'm going with Oxygen for that one.
Okay.
And then since you led the first week, I'll
you keep rolling. Keep rolling.
All right. So next up, we have M80 versus TTR. I think for that one, I'm going to go
Moist
with...
YFP.
Oh, Moist. Okay.
You can run it again if you want.
Cut. Let me restructure it, because in my sheet, I'd have it. That. Okay. So it is... So SAD TSM versus Oxygen Core.
Yep. And then
Moist
YFP. And then TWT Think.
Okay. Think. And then it is M80 versus TTR and TG versus W.
Yep.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and take us through the second week since you went first. For the first week, it is Moist X Shopify versus YFP for the first match of the day. Listen, as much as I love YFP, things are starting to click. I think it might just be a little bit doomed, especially with a tough matchup against Moist X Shopify. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Moist X Shopify for that one. And thinking versus TWT for the spice, for the flavor, for the drama and the juice and the teas from all over the world, I'm going to have to choose thinking versus TWT.
Ooh.
Not for anything logical, but just for the fact that it would just, the tension would just be too sweet not to have Thinking Men winning this one.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could go along with the plot, but I'm happy you are. So I'll be boring. I'm going Moist over YFP. Safe choice. And I'm going TWT. I think they had a rough week. I think they're going to bounce back. And I just want the drama between the Glazers and Winthrop to kind of be the focal point of the week. So why not just get there? Just cut right to it. And obviously Friday, we end with possibly the biggest match of the week, of the stage, really. I mean, you never want to go to relegation. But first, we have to get through M80 and Turtle Troop. We talked a lot of praise to Turtle Troop. We have. And sadly, I'm not going to back it up in my pick. I'm going to go M80. It's hard not to. They're 4-0. They're looking to go 5-0. Really tough to pick against them. And then the relegation match, the one, the only, the one to take it home. And I'm doing what I've done pretty much all season in my predictions. I'm going with the Glazers over Winthrop. I'm just a Glazer. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think despite the record for the Glazers being 0-4 and Winthrop having at least one victory under their belt, I still think that the Glazers look better than Winthrop University overall. And I think they're a little bit more well-rounded. And I think that well-roundedness is going to give them the edge over Winthrop University. So I will agree with you. I'm also going the Glazers versus Winthrop University.
Perfect. And you're going M80, right?
Yes.
Sure. Okay,
Yes. But
just
if there is
a team, you never know.
No, I respect that question, because if there is a team that's not Oxygen or Moist that is going to challenge M80, it has to be Turtle Troops.
Yeah.
Like that, like as of right now, as where we are currently in this present, right? Not in a future reality. In this present, if there is a team that is going to challenge M80, it is TTR. So I think that match, it will be pretty good to watch regardless.
Predictions are locked in. Let us know what you think about them. And that's this week. Hope everybody's ready for the matches that kick off. Starting soon.